You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Friday, December 1st. The 49ers are on their way to Philadelphia to face the Eagles on Sunday, and we couldn't be more excited about the matchup. Joining me to help me deep dive into all the cautious and favorable matchups is always on a Friday, Laurie Fitzpatrick. Laurie, how you doing? Because I don't think we spoke last week. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it was good. I actually celebrated my Thanksgiving on Sunday. So like I had leftovers for like the first half of this week, so I'm feeling extra fat on this Friday.
Hey, like, all through summer, I go on my walks. I do like my old health regimen, you can say. And then this time of the year, it's just like I'm in full hibernation mode. Self-care just goes out the window. So
For real.
I'm with you. I'm with you there. There's something about the sun going down at like 4 p.m. that, really just grinds my gears and
I
whatnot.
hate it.
But
It sucks.
yeah, when's the next Nick Bosa meme? I only eat carbs. Yeah. So a lot of people asked me to do that video. I felt like I needed like props or maybe an additional line. That's like a one-liner. So maybe I could have just done the one line, but felt too short if I did just that. But I'll find a way to sneak it in a future Nick Bosa video. So don't worry about that, guys.
Yeah,
but,
it was funny. I talked to some random 49ers fan and they were like, "Oh, you do a podcast with Steph? Like, dude, she does the best both of the impressions." And like that was like what they knew of you. Like, and it was just so
That's
funny.
hilarious.
I was like, "Yeah, that's true." Like it was super random. I don't even know who it was. I think it was somebody on the side of the street. Like it was just like a random person. Yeah.
Oh my
I was
God.
like, what? That's crazy. That's awesome though.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. That's cool. Yeah,
Like
but
in Miami, come on.
so that happened in Miami. A stranger went up to you and
like no, like we were talking about like, football
okay.
and stuff. And
Yeah.
like it was a stranger like in Miami. Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, the Nick Bosa impression has gone nationwide, I guess. But let's get into this matchup. I want to start with the weather as I always do. And sometimes, the weather slide is boring because it's like nothing's happening. It's sunny in Santa Clara, but the 49ers are playing in Philadelphia on Sunday, and there's 80% chance of rain for Sunday's game. That to me feels like it's going to play some type of role in this game, right? And usually that would tend to favor maybe the home team. I know a lot of fans are concerned about how Brock Purdy looked in the rain against Cleveland, how Jake Moody looked in the rain against Cleveland. He was 1 of 3 that day. As far as the winds go, it seems like 5 to 10 miles an hour. So I feel like Jake Moody should be able to deal with those conditions. It's not like, crazy winds or anything, but the rain certainly does concern me a bit here.
Didn't it rain in Jacksonville though?
A little bit. I don't think it was that much though.
Yeah, I think it was like more windy and like there was no, downplay there. Like, Purdy, threw 26 passes and had 296 yards. So, I mean, it was still, but yeah, I guess it didn't rain as often. But like, I would think it would be a factor if it's just downpouring the whole game. Then yeah.
Yeah, and so speaking of downpour and like, Brock Purdy, he was asked about the rain and if he would wear a glove if, it gets pretty slippery out there. And it sounds like he would wear a glove if it did come to that, but seems like he'll rely on his own judgment to determine whether or not he would need it. He kind of spoke about the fact that in Cleveland, it came in the middle of a drive. So that's why, he made it seem like it came in the middle of nowhere. So maybe that was the case, but it seems like it'll be in the back of their minds more so in this game than Cleveland, maybe.
The only quarterback I respect wearing gloves is Kurt Warner. Outside of him, Can't wear a glove. You got to be man. Come on, you can hold on to it. Unless your like hands are super small. Come on, bro.
Which his hands aren't like, exceptionally small or anything. Like when the ball was slipping out of his hand against Cleveland, like I looked it up because I was like, does he have small hands? Because he's a smaller quarterback, right?
Yeah.
In terms of his size. So I was
Small.
like, are his hands small too? And it's not. And so I don't know what the issue is. I mean, he said it seemed like it would take a downpour for him to wear the glove, and he's done it at Iowa before. So we'll just let him be the judge of when he thinks it's
Just
best to wear a glove.
pull a
It's
Tom Brady and let some air out of the ball a little bit. You'll be fine.
let's not do that. All right, let's not. But let's look at the injuries for both teams. As far as the 49ers go, a few guys missed practice this week, including Eric Armstead. But all of those guys, Armstead, Jordan Mason, and Ray McLeod, are questionable. And Armstead said earlier in the week he was going to suit up for this game. So it seems like overall a positive outlook for the 49ers health-wise going into this one. Can't really say the same for the Eagles. Probably the most notable right now is their linebacker, Zach Cunningham, is going to be out for this game, dealing with a hamstring injury. That is pretty big because linebacker is already one of their vulnerable spots in their defense. And now it seems like it's going to be Christian Ellis or Elise. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he'll be filling in for Cunningham, and we'll talk more about him in a bit. But that seems like a pretty significant one for the Eagles, as well as Fletcher Cox, who is questionable with the groin injury. Remember, he did not play last week, but he's pushing to play, I'm sure, for Sunday. So we'll just have to wait on that one Sunday morning to see if he's able to go.
Yeah, he got hurt. But I think Lane Johnson is playing.
Yeah, he wasn't even on the injury report. So Lane Johnson is going to be out there. That will give the Eagles a boost. He missed last week, right? So, yeah, a little give and take for the Eagles injury report compared to last week. What do you think about the loss of Zach Cunningham, though? Like, do you feel like that's going to be a big blow for them?
Yeah, I do. Mostly like because in the middle of the field. That's kind of one of their weak points as a defense. Literally running the ball and as a pass defense. So that one's a little bit tougher to kind of, it's a tough pill to swallow. You can't like go out there with rookies. Linebacker is one of the hardest positions to kind of, really get to know and to really understand and feel comfortable. So, yeah, that should be worrisome for Eagles fans for sure.
Yeah, it seems like Christian Ellis, he was drafted in 2021, or maybe he was an undrafted free agent in 2021. He hasn't gotten a lot of playing time, and so I mean, going up against Kyle Shanahan offense after not having a lot of experience, probably not the best draw, but we'll just see how that works out for him. And we will talk about him more in a bit, as well as one of the matchups I like for the 49ers. But let's get into the cautious matchups first. I do want to start with the Eagles defensive line. And I want to start by saying, like, the Eagles defensive line is not as scary as it was last season. Since week 7, they've ranked 17th in pressure and 17th in pressure and 16th in time to pressure. And the big thing, though, for me is they seem to be a lot better at run stuffing this season. But don't let that fool you. They still have some dogs on this defensive line. And we know the 49ers offensive line has been below average. And the biggest dog that worries me in this line is evidenced by Brock Purdy's injury in the NFC Championship game is Hassan Reddick. And he's going to be going up against Colton McKivitz, who I'd be nervous about in this matchup. I mean, there's not a lot of games that I go into feeling confident about Colton McKivitz, but this one especially seems to be a big discrepancy between the two players. Reddick, it has a 24.3% pass rush win rate, which is 6th among edge rushers, and he has 8.5 sacks on the season. He can make drive-killing, game-changing plays, and it wouldn't shock me if the 49ers have George Kittle or Kyle Juszczyk help out on that side to help hold McKivitz.
Yeah, they're gonna have to ask. They're gonna have to ask some people for help, and I think this is one of the X factors. So I have two X factors. One, the defensive side of the ball for the Eagles. That's the D line. They have to step up. You have Reddick and Josh Sweat out there, and they're top 10. I think Sweat is 8th in pressures, and this is just fourth quarter alone. That's really when they step up. Sometimes you feel like they disappeared throughout the game, and then randomly in the fourth quarter, when the game is close, as we're gonna get to, the Eagles, facing adversity and they persevere and they get through it and they end up pulling out a win. It's because of these two guys, Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat. They get those pressures in the fourth quarter. Reddick is 3rd in the league in pressures in the fourth quarter, and he's 1st in points saved in the fourth quarter, which is 14. So he's saving points, meaning like there could be a wide receiver wide open in the end zone, and because of his sack, they didn't get that points, and that's 14 points. So that's 2 touchdowns. So that's like a pretty big X factor to me. I just think that's interesting because, they lost some guys last year, but at this point last year, they had the same amount of sacks, 32. And it's just, they have a different, defensive coach, right? So Gannon was more of a, he's like more of a laid back type of coordinator. And this year, they have a coordinator who likes to kind of switch it up a little bit more. So, maybe this secondary was able to kind of feed off of the Eagles D line because they were able to kind of sit back. But this year, they're leaving the secondary kind of like, they're leaving them hanging, and it's all up to the D line to be able to get home because maybe they're blitzing a little bit more, maybe they're switching it up a little bit more. So that's kind of why maybe their secondary isn't playing as well. But their D line actually still has the same amount of sacks as they did last year at this point of the season. So I think they're just playing a little bit different.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And Josh Sweat is a hell of a player. He has 6.5 sacks on the season. He has a 20.3 pass rush win rate. The reason I'm not as worried about Josh Sweat is only because of Trent Williams. Yeah. That's literally it. Like that saves some of my worry a bit. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as a whole, this defensive line of the Eagles is still really good. So Jalen Carter as well has been, he's emerged as a really good player. He's a freak athlete as well. He has 4 sacks of his own as a defensive tackle. So that's
Jordan Davis too,
for sure. Yeah, especially with the run defense, he's killer there. Yeah.
We'll talk about him a little bit more.
Yeah. Going to the other side of the ball, but sticking to the trenches here, I want to talk about the Eagles offensive line because they're still one of the best in the league, right? And the 49ers defense, obviously back to their dominant ways since the bye week. They look great, all that. They're getting sacks again. They're getting pressures again. Nick Bosa, Chase Young, all these things, yeah? But they're going to meet their match against this Eagles line. And I think in particular, the cautious matchup for me here is the run blocking. So the Eagles run blocking against the 49ers run defense. And let me just go to this slide here. So if you look at the Eagles run blocking composite rating, they are ranked 1st. They are 1st in run block win rate. And so the run blocking is really the cautious matchup here, led by All-Pro and future Hall of Famer center Jason Kelce. And so I just think he's able to bully defensive linemen. The way he's able to get to the second level too is really impressive. He's almost as dominant as he's about, like, to me, he's like level of like Trent Williams as far as like dominant offensive lineman, right? Different positions, but still just being able to command your blocks basically. And I don't know, it's very impressive from Kelce. And so I wouldn't be surprised if I see Kelsey get a hell of a block on like Fred Warner or Greenlaw or just like some of these defensive linemen, and you're like, what the hell? Like, how did how did he do that, right? It also doesn't bode well that the 49ers defense has struggled against zone runs. They've given up the 10th highest yards per carry, 4.53 yards per carry against zone runs, and the second highest success rate to zone runs since week 7. So just something I'm keeping an eye on here. And DeAndre Swift, who has looked good in this Eagles team, he's getting 3.31 yards per carry before contact. That's what he's averaging before contact. That is crazy. And that to me tells me the Eagles offensive line is blocking their butts off.
They're moving that line of scrimmage up literally 3 yards. So they're pushing defenses back, and I'm pretty sure Dallas Goedert, the tight end, is gonna play.
You think he'll play?
I think he's gonna play.
Yeah, we didn't talk about him in the injury slide, but he's doubtful for the game, Laurie. Like, he practiced today, but I'm paying attention to that doubtful thing. You think they're just trying to play some Jedi mind tricks there?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think he just has the mindset where, like, and maybe we'll talk about this in a little bit, but it's like, Philly, they're underdogs, man. Especially when you look at the line in terms of betting.
But it's like, I know, like, in Vegas's eyes, they're underdogs, but are they really underdogs?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because they are, because if you watch any show this week, they're all picking the 49ers to win this game. They all are. They are. Like,
it's a stretch.
All of them. But... No, I was watching ESPN Live, and there's some blonde chick on there. There was the old Lions quarterback. I forget his name. There was the Spears dude, and one other person. I don't remember who it was. They all picked the 49ers to win. And I just think that's something that Nick Sirianni, his cocky ass, is going to the locker room. He's telling his players, they think you're underdogs. Back in 2017, you were underdogs. And, like, I think that these guys are, we talked about this before. Injuries, like, I'm not going to say it's all mindset, like, it's all mental, but, like, you can fight through that, man, especially, like, when you got something to prove, like, it was a flaw, like, or a fluke that, they won last year in the NFC Championship. Like, Dan Orlovsky, thank you. Yeah. I went way back there, but it's just like they're all picking the 49ers to win. I think if there's one game you can fight through injuries, like this might be the one game you want to do it. So
it's not just. I mean, maybe they have a really tough, like, slate of games. Like, they already went through the Chiefs, they already went through the Bills. That's why
they played the Cowboys, they played the Dolphins,
and they played. Well, no, they played the Cowboys after the 49ers next week, right? So.
Well, they played them. They played them.
If I was Eagles, as a lifelong Eagles fan, I would save Dallas Goedert for the Dallas Cowboys game.
I mean, that's true. Dallas. Like, the depth, like, I think that they have, like, pretty good depth, like the Eagles. But I don't know, you're going against Chase Young and Bosa. Like, you like Jalen Hurts. Sometimes you could tell that sometimes, I don't want to say he sees ghosts because that's a stretch, but sometimes he will prematurely leave the pocket. And if you have a spy on him, he's gonna, not get very far. And that's you saw that. Like, I'd watch every single one of the Eagles games. As some people may know, I wrote about the Jags, but I grew up in South Jersey and in Philadelphia area. So it's just like, I don't know. There's a little bit of more heart to this podcast right now for me. Just because, like, I don't know. I just think that they're fighting for their lives. I feel like, especially against this team. This game is the NFL's game.
They've been like,
they're the underdogs. Like, they're saying that Purdy got hurt, and that's the only reason why they lost. Everybody's talking shit. They said that Bradbury was trash. AJ Brown is getting the fans on Debo. This is like, come on. This is a big game.
I know it's big. I know it's big. You don't have to tell me, but
you're right.
I mean, for all those reasons, I mean, this is a really big matchup for both teams. I don't know if Dallas Goedert is going to play. When I hear doubtful, I do think doubtful, but crazier things have happened, I guess. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see if they pull a fast one on the 49ers. I mean, it will
Yeah.
definitely even give them a greater boost with the run blocking if he is out there.
Yeah.
So just
I mean,
something to keep an
I'm
eye
not in
on.
Philly, right? And media members can be deceiving just to get clicks. But I was listening to a podcast, and this guy was saying, "Hey, I was out there at the practice, yesterday, and Dallas Goddard was like, I'm not gonna tell you shit if I'm playing or not." But then he like tore it up on the practice field, and he like gave him a little wink. He could be embellishing this, but it was just like it made me think, like, dang, like, is he gonna play? Like, I don't know. Seemed like. But yeah, it was probably just a media member just like making me get all excited for no reason. So
And also, like, I mean, players push to play, right? Like, he may be like thinking to himself, like, I want to play, but the Eagles maybe practice some caution.
yeah,
I don't know. We'll wait to see. Like, Sunday morning, we'll get the injury report, or not the injury report, but the active and inactive list, and we'll see what side Dallas Goddard is on. But certainly could give the Eagles a boost if he is available. Um, Sticking on the Eagles' run game, though, I want to talk about Jalen Hurts and his ability to run. He ranks first among quarterbacks in carries per game, red zone carries per game, and rushing touchdowns with 11. And it's not just the tush push, it's not just scrambles, like he does the quarterback draw as well.
that's what won him the
But going
game last week.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's something you really got to look out for, especially as soon as they get close to the red zone. They're pulling that for sure. So
Yeah.
something the 49ers have to be prepared for, as well as the tush push, which they use in the short yardage situations. They're third in third down conversion efficiency, and they're first in fourth down conversions. And the tush push is a big reason why. And they're very aggressive when it comes to going for it on fourth down because, if they're in that fourth and short situation, they are going to do the tush push. And so they won't hesitate to go for it. And, most cases it's like the right decision. So
Wow.
something that the 49ers have to avoid getting in that situation to begin with, letting them get into those yardage situations. But of course, that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly looking at this chart. I'm really surprised that the Cardinals are up so high. Like, what? That's just like wow to me. I would think that the Eagles, they, if it was anybody, it was, I don't know, maybe I guess Doug Peterson hasn't been great, but he's really aggressive. But I don't know. I just thought a better team would be up there. Derrick Henry. Yeah, I mean, with the
Yeah.
Titans. But wow, yeah, I would say, yeah, a lot of it is the tush push. But like you're saying, it's just the draw in general. But I looked it up, man, and the 49ers D in against not scrambles, but QB sneaks and QB draws. Um, they are fourth in yards allowed, and they allowed 5 touchdowns. I didn't look up the difference within the red zone and outside the red zone, but then they're fourth in stuffs. So I'm like, how is that like even possible? So it's just like, I guess it could go either way, maybe, maybe I could have looked up, with, I guess Chase Young probably wouldn't make that big of a difference, but, they're 22nd in expected points allowed, which is pretty low too. So maybe it's something where it is inside the red zone, that they struggle a little bit more.
Yeah, and that would be my concern, right? The one positive, to turn it into a positive, like for the 49ers, the Eagles are 6th in the league in pass block win rate, which you're probably thinking to yourself, like, Steph, like, that's good. What are you talking about? But yeah, they are really good in both pass blocking and run blocking. Surprisingly, though, Hurts has been pressured on 6.7% of his dropbacks. That's 11 most actually in the league. And he's been sacked on 6.9% of his dropbacks, which is also 11th highest. And part of the reason for that, I think, is because he's holding on to the football the 5th longest.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I think it's just him.
Yeah, it could be. And so because of that, I do think there's some reason that I think the defensive line, as far as pass rushing, could maybe contain, or at least like could maybe get to Jalen Hurts to some extent if he's holding on to the ball that long. Like, that's a hell of a long time.
I wonder what their pass to I wonder what their pressure to sack rate is. Like the amount of times that they pressure compared to just sacks. Because, you know, like you can get a sack without the whole line getting pressure. You know, it could be just a one-off win. Yeah, but then like a whole collapse of the line is more of like pressure to sack. I wonder what that is. I'm going to have to look that up.
The 49ers defense sack rate is 7.1, which is 13th in the NFL. And let's see if there's pressure here. PROE. What is that? Pressure rate over expected?
Yeah. Pressure rate over expected. So that's like what they should get, and then how much better they are.
Okay, so if that's what it stands for, 49ers are number 1 in that department, 5.3%.
It's like, oh, they may not win this, and then they win it. So
yeah. Oh yeah, I see. Pass rush minus their expected pass rate against. That's what PROE means? Pass rate minus their expected pass rate against.
Wow, that's a lot of words.
Yeah, I'm like, did you catch that?
No. Oh, no, I'm not processing that right now.
But okay, so if you look at this chart, this is the Eagles pass protection composite rating. Also a lot of words, but Eagles are 7th. Really good, right? The 49ers have played 2 other teams that are better than this. The Vikings are at number 2, who the 49ers played, and they also played the Browns, who are number 6. Now, the 49ers were able to get sacks on both of those teams. So, and that was before their bye week, right? Now you look at how they're performing since the bye week. So I'm not saying it's going to be some Sackapalooza out there. I'm just saying that, pass protection for the Eagles, they're going to meet their match, I think, in the 49ers defensive line in this game. But still got to look out for the run blocking, of course, and DeAndre Swift and Jalen Hurts and their ground attack, because that's where I think the 49ers could struggle against.
Yeah, I think Swift made one of the best plays of last. Go ahead, but what?
Yeah. No, I was going to say, like, I agree with you. He's been crazy this year. It's for good reason that he took over that starting job as quickly as he did for the Eagles. He's been incredible. So I am a little worried about that, the run blocking.
Yeah, I mean, they just like dropped Miles Sanders like he was, a bag of dirt. He's on the Panthers now. And it sucks because I picked him up last year in my dynasty fantasy. And yeah, I want to pretty much just drop him because Miles Sanders is horrible outside of Philadelphia because the line is just so good. Anybody is going to perform really well. And like Keith is saying, like if Swift's good at Detroit, he's definitely going to be good here in Philly. And I say here in Philly, like I'm in Philly, but I'm just used to saying it, But
you're there in spirit.
I kind of am, but I don't know. I think it's interesting how he bounces it out. Sometimes he just sees some pretty good. He sees something out of nothing.
I mean, his offensive line is giving him like crazy holes, like and he knows what to do with it. So, yeah, it's been a great season for Swift so far. But I have another cautious matchup here, and AJ Brown. Ring a bell? I mean, AJ Brown is one of the best wide receivers in the league, top 5. You can certainly make the argument he's the best. So this is one that I'm worried about for the 49ers. He averages 95.5 yards per game this season. That ranks 6th in the NFL. And I think what I'm most concerned with is that man coverage might not work against A.J. Brown. He leads the league in yards and touchdowns against man coverage this season. And if you guys can see the screen here, it says he's number 4 in wide receiver rate of getting open against single man coverage in 2023.
They call him 7-Eleven because he's always open.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know that Mooney Ward did a hell of a job, shadowing DK Metcalf. Impressive, especially after Metcalf went off against the Cowboys last night. And Ambry Thomas has been good too. But, I mean, I think this is still going to be a big test for the 49ers corners. And no matter how you slice it, no matter how good the 49ers play, A.J. Brown is that good that no matter what, he's going to get his, right? The question is how much? So I don't think they're going to stop A.J. Brown like you did DK Metcalf. I think it's going to be more of a trying to limit him as much as possible. And of course, doing that goes back to trying to get to Jalen Hurts as much as possible too, right? Which that is easier said than done. So big test coming up.
They run a lot of slants, a lot of outs. Like the Eagles, it's, can be quick passing. But, like we discussed with Jalen Hurts, like if you force him to hold on to it, it should then that's what it gets troublesome for him. But I think that, you have to pressure him. You have to press him at the line and then bring maybe Fred Warner over to kind of take away that slant. Then, you're forced to go to other places. For sure, if Goddard is playing, they have to go to him. They have to go to Devontae. Is Devontae able to beat the 49ers defense deep? Because when he's relied on, sometimes he's dropped it. So if they do decide, hey, let's try to take away A.J. Brown, but more so just take away the first read of Jalen Hurts, which is most likely A.J. Brown, then, you're kind of putting on pressure on a lot of the other Eagles offensive weapons to make plays. And, that's how they've been beaten. That's how they fought off, that's how they become, that's how they fought through adversity, was because teams were able to do that. So it's just they're going to spread the 49ers defense thin, man. And every single player out there, they cannot miss tackles. This has to be, one of the games where they, I don't know. I think it's going to come down to heart, but Eagles, fighting, persevering through things is, what makes them good. So it's going to be interesting.
I'm glad you said that, because that was literally my next point. And it's not so much a specific matchup, but it's just one of the things I'm cautious about in this game is the Eagles' ability to come from behind, right? They've done it so many times, so many different ways this season. They've trailed in 8 games this year, and they've won 7 of those. They've trailed at halftime in 5 games this year and won all of those. Jalen Hurts has won a record 8 consecutive games in a row when trailing by double digits. I don't know if it's fair to say just Jalen Hurts, right? The Eagles have won a record 8 consecutive games in a row when trailing by double digits. But, I mean, I don't think you could deny that a huge reason for that has been Jalen Hurts, right? He's able to put the team on his back when it matters most. And, all throughout this week, I've pointed out that when the Eagles are trailing, his QBR is so much higher. And yeah, he's able to flip a switch pretty much. So that's kind of my concern, is that the 49ers can't get too comfortable if they do get in the lead in this game, because the Eagles have shown they are resilient.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's in Philadelphia too.
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of a big factor. With those fans kind of they've irritated some players where the players have kind of turned around and kind of talk shit, kind of get them out of their element, which they need to stay in the zone this whole entire game, like you're saying, because that stat is out of control. 7 out of 8 games trailing by double digits,
It's
they've come
crazy.
back and won. Like
Double
that.
digits. Yep.
That's pretty impressive. I think that one of the games that I went back to watch was the Dolphins game. The Dolphins are like, they're very similar to the 49ers.
Mhm.
Now, when it comes to scheme, not obviously like their players in general, because the
Yeah.
Dolphins have, some of the fastest players.
Mhm.
But I think the 49ers are they're a little bit better when it comes to running between the tackles. So, yeah, I think I don't even know where I'm going with that, but like in terms of staying on subject, I'm not doing it. but yeah, I think yeah, McCaffrey's gonna have to really step up this game too.
Yeah, I mean that's fair to say because like Jalen Hurts, Eagles MVP, and I would say Christian McCaffrey's 49ers MVP. So, yeah, definitely gonna have to be just careful of that. You have to play all 4 quarters against this team. The one thing that can't be overstated is the fact that 49ers have more rest going into it. Eagles also have gone through 2 very physical games, right? Against, the Chiefs and then the Bills. And they went overtime with the Bills. So that could play a role in this game too, one that certainly benefits the 49ers. But I think also it's up to the 49ers to take advantage of that based on the way they play the game, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Then they play the Cowboys next week, like you mentioned before. Yeah, this is the craziest stretch of games that they're gonna have to go through. So that like I think it was Keith that mentioned it. Resiliency is only gonna last so long.
it
So
wears off. Yeah. I mean, and I think it does, right? Like I saw someone comparing this year's Eagles team to the Vikings of last year. I don't know if I would go that far just because like the Vikings last year to me were like absolutely fraudulent. I don't think I see the Eagles as being a fraudulent team. But their their record definitely is better than how they've played if you just look at all the quarters they've played, but it's because they've been able to gut out some wins.
I think like maybe the only similarity is like I think the Vikings lost. I don't know how many games it was, but it was a lot of games by one score. So like
Yeah,
maybe the
yeah.
fact that like but the Eagles are winning those games. So it's like how could you even
Well,
like
so were the
say that they're
Vikings,
like
but but I
well, I
agree.
mean,
Like
yeah, but not
to me,
like
it's a
yeah,
little
I guess.
different. It's a little different to me. That was a bit of an extreme like comparison to me. But yeah,
Then all
let's get to the 49ers favorable matchups because my favorite part of the show. And I got quite a few to talk about. The first one being well, just give me the 49ers pass catchers all day against this Eagle secondary, against these linebackers. Ayuk, Kittle, let's get Debo on the action as well. Now I'll tell you why. So the Eagles play man coverage, the 7th most in the league. They also are in single high 57% of the time. And I'm going to show you some numbers to support why I feel so strongly that these guys can have a good game against man in single high. Well, we've talked about it on the show before against other opponents, but if you look at Brandon Ayuk's uh, target share against man coverage, his target share against single high, they're almost the same. 24.3% target share in man coverage, 24.2% against single high, and his air yards percentage 46.9% against man coverage, 46 air yard percentage against single high. So Brandon Ayuk is basically the number one option in this offense against man coverage and single high, both of which the Eagles do at a high rate. George Kittle is the second most in both of those situations, and then Debo kind of takes a back seat against man and single high. But I honestly, I'll talk more about Debo in a bit. And so for now, I just want to focus on Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. And I want to talk about Bradbury because he has allowed 6 touchdowns in his coverage, according to Next Gen Stats. And Brandon Ayuk has the 3rd highest average targeted air yards this season with 14.8. In their last 5 games, the Eagles have given up the 11th most deep passing yards per game and the 3rd most deep passing touchdowns, including the most receiving touchdowns to perimeter wide receivers. So that doesn't seem to bode well for the Eagles going up against Brandon Ayuk, who has just turned it up a notch this year. And as Keith said earlier, he's the true 7-Eleven. He is always open. Yeah, Brandon Ayuk is moving up there as far as respected wide receivers in the league. And so I think he's primed to have a big game here. And I feel the same way about George Kittle. I mean, we already talked about the fact that Zach Cunningham is out for this game. So Christian Ellis is going to have to fill in his spot. And even before knowing that, right, the Eagles are number 32. They're dead last in DVOA covering tight ends. So I think he has a big opportunity here to have a big game as well.
Yeah. I think if Ayuk is 1-on-1 against Bradbury and and it's single high, and I mean, I don't know why the safety would not help, Bradbury against Ayuk, because that would be like deadly. Because Bradbury is just so bad against man. That would be a time where I could agree saying that he's trash against man, because honestly, it's not good. That's why I don't even know why the Eagles play as much man as they do. It's like frustrating to even watch because it's just like he's not good in man. Like if it's like zone match, then like maybe that's a little bit different because like then, and I don't know if like these sites that are saying they play this much man is like zone match. Like, he's matching that wide receiver when he enters his zone, which may seem like man if that wide receiver is not running any outside of that zone. Then you stay on that guy. But that if another receiver comes near that zone, then you're going to kind of play like help defense in the middle. And maybe that could be man to man, for the first couple seconds. And yeah, he's going to get beat. So that's something you definitely want to look, forward to if you see, single high safety. And then, what I think is going to like, what I think could happen is like Ayuk is on one side of the field and he gets that safety help, and then Christian McCaffrey runs like a wheel on the other side and he's going up against like Hassan Reddick. Like that's something that like scares me, or Kittle. Because like you're saying, like the Eagles defense, they have the worst EPA when defending the middle of the field. The worst in the league. That's not even like tight ends. That's like the middle of the field in general.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's crazy. And then you knock on top of that Zach Cunningham being out, they're gonna have a tough time. I think this is definitely gonna be one of the key matchups. If they're scared about losing the middle of the field, and then you get like Christian McCaffrey up the sideline, that's gonna be an interesting one. So yeah, it's gonna be deadly. if Shanahan can dial it up right, then it's gonna be deadly. It's just like, how did the Eagles do so well against a similar offense with the Dolphins? Like they literally run the same. I don't want to say the same exact scheme, but like in terms of formation, in terms of personnel, only Tua has, I think, like more snaps with 2 in 21 personnel and in 12 personnel. So both the same, 2 tight ends or 2 running backs. And, the Eagles did pretty well. And I think a lot of that was because they didn't let the Dolphins take the top off. But that's not what the 49ers do. They can get 5 yards at a time and hold on to the ball and they can win that way. So that's where I think obviously those two teams differ. That's why I think this is going to be one of the best games of the year, because this matchup Like the matchups are so crazy, like in favor of one side and the other side, especially when looking at Kittle and Ayuk. So yeah, that's definitely. I don't want to say that's one of the X factors. I think Christian McCaffrey is going to be one of the X factors, but obviously Ayuk can go off, but they're going to have to put a lot of attention on him if they want to keep him.
Yeah, and George Kittle too, if he's not like helping out against Reddick, right? Like I think he has a big shot here, and he has opportunity to do something cool on Sunday. He could become the 5th tight end to hit 6,000 receiving yards in his first 7 seasons. Other tight ends who are part of this club are Travis Kelce, Jimmy Graham, Antonio Gates, and Rob Gronkowski. So that's elite company right there. And Kittle just needs 79 yards to make it happen. And hey, maybe it happens on Sunday, right? So I think talking about some of these matchups, it wouldn't be the craziest thing to happen then. So, but Laurie, you mentioned the Eagles and their struggles, in the middle of the field. They've given up a quarterback rating of 95.6 on throws between the hashes. That's 28th in the NFL. And as I'm sharing here, this tweet from Akash, the Eagles' defensive ranks when defending short passes over the middle of the field. They're number 31 in EPA per play, number 29 in success rate, number 30 in explosives allowed, number 23 in yak allowed. And I know you fit from some of what Eagles are struggling with right now. Is this like one of the reasons why?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like they allow offenses to stay on the field way too long. And it's because they're able to keep drives alive with going over the middle of the field. And I think slants might be a little bit of an issue. I think it's really up to the line to be able to make sure that Brock Purdy doesn't have a chance to get to the middle of the field. If it's going to be his first read or if it's going to be his second read or third read. If it's his first read, they might have an issue. They're going to have to do a lot of disguises. In order to take away that middle of the field. But just looking at the numbers, man, I just don't see how that's possible.
Yeah, so Christian McCaffrey could definitely benefit from that, as could Debo as well. Debo's the one that called Bradbury trash. So I know in the back of his head, maybe Kyle will want to feed him a little bit in this game to satisfy that. So yeah, what's interesting is like I feel like Brock Purdy hasn't really been checking down as much as we've seen like in the past for 49ers offense. I actually saw something that said that he has like the lowest, I think it's like 4%, the lowest check down rate of any quarterback in the league. He might be tied with one or two other guys, but it's pretty evident when you watch him play. But let's just say that, the Eagles do take care of business on the back end. Brandon Ayuk's covered, maybe George Kittle's covered, a little bit more downfield. You have that option, it seems like, in, the in between the hashes and the intermediate level. And just the way that Kyle Shanahan's offense works, it just seems like there's always going to be someone open, right? So, yeah, maybe that will always be there available to them if they need it in this game. But yeah, the Eagles defense as a whole has allowed 23 passing touchdowns this season. Part of the reason for that is because teams are passing against the Eagles more than any other team. And since week 7, the Eagles have allowed the second most passing touchdowns and the third most passing yards per game. So I'm kind of feeling like, Brock Purdy, he's not going to say it, but I think he's like super motivated for this game for like the obvious reasons. Like, on the podium, he's going to say this is just any other game. But I mean, I think we all know it's a little bit more than that. And I like the matchup, for some of the reasons we already mentioned. But, I think Brock Purdy can have a pretty good day on Sunday too.
Yeah, I think so too. If he doesn't, hold the ball for too long, because like we were talking about Hassan Reddick,
Yeah.
Josh Sweat obviously is going against Trent, but I think the fact that he's number one in the league in yards per attempt, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Like, that means like either your first read is just never open, and the second read is a little bit further downfield, or I mean, I don't want to keep saying the scheme, because Brock Purdy has played better than expected. So you can't just say it's the scheme, but like, you're scheming up like 9-yard passes for like your first read. Like, that's, I don't know. I want to know how long he's in the pocket. But he's pressured on what I think it was like 40% of his passes. That's why
Yeah.
I wanted to look at like pressure to sack rate. Like, you can't like allow that. You have to get, I think, he'll have to get rid of the ball a little bit sooner. Because this defensive line on the Eagles, like, is, they're
Yeah.
pretty good. And I know, the 49ers played well against the Cowboys, but like, come on, they just have Micah Parsons. Like, it's not like their whole defensive line is stacked. So it is a little bit different going against this team, especially when you look at McKivitz and everything like that. So, I think the 49ers and Brock Purdy have a really good chance of tearing this defense apart if they're able to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker, and maybe lower that yards per attempt. And they could just really run away with that thing, like on the offensive side.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on the quicker part, because start the season, I think he was like pretty quick. Like, if he played any team that blitzed a lot, of course, like that had to be quick. The last 2 weeks, his time to throw have been pretty long. Like last week, his time to throw against the Seahawks was 3.41, which is the tied for the second longest. And then the week before that, it was, let's see here, it was 3.1, which is fifth longest. So that's crazy to me, but that just tells you like he's able to kind of extend his own time in the pocket, because I already talked about the fact this offensive line is not that great. Like, they are not doing
Yeah,
him any favors. But he's kind of able to create more time for himself, because
yeah,
like just the way he moves around in the pocket.
yeah. He's
I
like a little
don't know if
elusive.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll have that benefit as much this week. And of course, like, because you know what happened there not that long ago,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
I think maybe that'll have his like internal clock moving a little bit more. So I would expect to see that in this game, along with just some of the coverage holes that we were just talking about with the Eagles. I don't think he'll necessarily have to wait for someone to get open as much, right? So
Yeah,
just
I'm hoping not, because
yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely gonna be like careful with that side. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see him move to the left a little bit more than maybe we'd seen in the past. But yeah, I mean, the Eagles are allowing a 75.3 quarterback rating against man, which is, or sorry, in man coverage. That's 29th in the NFL. Purdy has a 85 quarterback rating against man, which is third best. He's thrown 16 touchdowns. That's tied for first against man. And he has a 66% completion rate, which is second best against man coverage this year. And yeah, you mentioned his yards per attempt. It's 9.4. The Eagles, interesting enough, are giving up just 6.6 yards per attempt. That's ninth best. So it'll be interesting to see like how
it
where does that
changes.
fall? Yeah, where does that fall in this game? Uh, so yeah, it'll be interesting, but I think there's going to be opportunities for Brock Purdy to have a good game. And we talked about Christian McCaffrey and how he could be used in the passing game in this one, but and I already talked about the fact that like the Eagles defense is so good at defending the run. But I kind of like Christian McCaffrey against, the Eagles defense this week in the run game. And I'll tell you why. Since week 7, the Eagles have allowed the second highest explosive run rate and the 5th highest yards per carry to zone runs. And I believe I saw something that said 61.7% of McCaffrey's runs are zone runs. And the Eagles are allowing 6 yards per carry on attempts outside the tackles. That ranks 25th. And they're giving up 6.3 yards per carry on attempts outside the left tackle, specifically. Hello, Trent Williams. And that ranks 27th. So I think there's going to be some wiggle room for the 49ers to get some run game going against this Eagles defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think so too, kind of. But it's tough, right? Because I think that when I looked at the stats of the Eagles defense, when they don't use a nose tackle, they especially when teams are running up the middle, they were 30th without a nose tackle. When they use a nose tackle like Jordan Davis, they jump to 3rd in rush yards allowed per attempt. I think they went from like 5 or something to down to 3 when they use a nose tackle. So I think that might be one of the strategies for the Eagles this game, utilizing Jordan Davis a lot more than maybe you would think. I think maybe they might use him a little bit more. And I think Christian McCaffrey is an X factor of this game. So I think he's the one X factor, and then defensive line, getting home would be an X factor for the Eagles. But for the 49ers, I think Christian McCaffrey, because when the Eagles hold running backs down to a low, amount of yards, they do pretty well. Because you're forcing teams to throw, and then you're forcing yourself into bad decisions. But I think if Christian McCaffrey can get the ball rolling a little bit more, then you're kind of not relying on Purdy to kind of do everything with Ayuk and Deebo and Kittle, and it'll just kind of it'll be a cherry on top. If Kittle is getting open, but you can kind of rely on Christian to get it done. So I think if Jordan Davis is out there, it might be a little bit more difficult for him. I just think that the Eagles play more of that shell defense, and I know the whole shell thing. I don't know why they play man as much as they do. If they play man, they're gonna lose. So I think that's one of the things where if they play zone and they kind of keep their corners low, then they'll be able to tackle outside of the numbers and maybe eliminate those plays stretching the field horizontally. And then through the middle, you have Jordan Davis. So I think that should be the game plan for them. If they play man, then it's done. So
yeah,
opinion.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong statement there, and that's why I feel good about it from 49ers fan perspective, right? Because they've played a lot of man this year. I don't know if they're going to go away from that against the 49ers. If they do, I think they increase their chances. But yeah, to your point, it's gonna be tough sledding. Keith's saying you should play some right tackle. But yeah, not against Hassan Reddick, but I don't know. You might be a little better than Colton McKivitz. Who knows? But
that's so hilarious.
I have one more favorable matchup for the 49ers, and it is the Eagles and turnovers. It's not really like a matchup. It's more just like a thing. So the Eagles are 18th in the league in giveaways. They've lost 6 fumbles, and Jalen Hurts alone is responsible for 10 turnovers with interceptions, right? So he's tied for 9th most in interceptions among quarterbacks. And so I think the opportunities are going to be there for the 49ers. They're one of the best teams at creating those opportunities, forcing those turnovers. They're tied for 2nd in the NFL in takeaways with 21 total. And they're 1st in interceptions with 15. So I like the 49ers' chances of being able to get a turnover or two against this Eagles team, which will definitely help them. But they got to help themselves too. They have to be able to convert those to points. And that's something these last couple of weeks, they haven't really capitalized on those opportunities. And when you're playing a team as good as the Eagles, you need all the points you can get, right? So if your defense is going to give you those opportunities, Kyle, you need to have your offense ready to put points on the board and make the most of it. So that's something I definitely want to see in this game.
Yeah, no, I can, I see you there, for sure. Like, they have I think it was -2 turnover differential, the Eagles, which is just like night and day compared to last year. I think last year they were first or second.
Yeah.
So I think, a lot of that is the Eagles defense, like, isn't sitting back like they were. Like the defensive line, they're getting more creative with the blitzes, and that's kind of leaving the defense hanging in a way to get beat. And that's, what I think has happened. And the offense has just kind of been able to kind of stick it out, and they've somehow been able to kind of win it. But I think the turnovers, they may not come from the secondary if the Eagles are going to get any turnovers. If they do, it might be, pressuring Brock Purdy. And I feel like this game is going to be won or lost in the trenches, without a doubt. Right?
That's totally fair. That's totally fair. I mean,
It's going to be dirty. Like,
yeah, it's going to be I really hope that the game doesn't get chippy. I really hope that the refs don't try to take it over. I just hope they let both of these teams play, because these teams are so good on their own and so entertaining on their own. You don't need to make it interesting. Yeah, I want both teams to have fun. That's all I want. But Laurie,
so funny.
what's your score prediction for this one? And disclaimer for everyone watching, early in the show, Laurie did say she grew up in Philly, so there might be a bit of a bias in her score prediction. Just putting that out there.
I honestly can't say who's going to win, but I know the score. It's going to be 34-31.
Ooh, she got a peek at the script.
I did. I got a peek at the script. I went down to NFL Films. Somebody let me see it. It's going to be 34-31. I don't know who's going to win, man.
You said 34-31?
Yeah. What did I say last week? Was I right last week? Did you write it down?
I didn't write it down. Last week you weren't on, but the week before that, I think I did write it down because I was like, I'm going to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
Against the Bucks, you said 38-10. So that was close.
What was the score?
And I said 31-17. I think I remember thinking to myself, like, we were close. Yeah. So
she picking the Eagles. I don't know, man, because I feel like the Eagles have kind of they somehow got away, like, with some of these wins. Like, look, if you look at last week's game when they went into overtime, Kelsey and Hurts were shaking their head like they were pissed off that they're going to overtime. And then, like, after the game, they interview Hurts. They're like, "How did you do it?" I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, we just won. It's just like, are you going to be able to get away with that with a team that's, like, not so sketchy like the Bills are?
Hurts?
I don't know.
Hurts. Sorry, I thought you were talking about,
like, if that dude catches that pass in the end zone, it was like a clear drop. I don't think the 49ers are going to have that issue. So, I could totally see the 49ers winning it 34-31, but I think it's going to be close. And I think it's going to be high scoring because I think the 49ers defense is what lost them those 3 games. Yeah, Trent Williams wasn't there. Brock Purdy, but at the end of the day, it was still the defense. Like, you can't let the Browns do that. Their offense do that. Do what they did. And maybe that was, that's just, 3 games that will never happen again. But at the same time, it was a defense that was a big reason. So that's why I think it'll be kind of a high-scoring game. Ooh, could be a statement.
That's fair. I do have a high-score prediction as well. I have been saying this week 34-27. So we got the 34 part on the same page, Laurie. So that's good. But of course, I got to go with the 49ers on this one. So 49ers 34, Eagles 27. And I think I'll just say this. Like, so the 49ers and the Eagles are tied for third in scoring. 28.2 points per game is what they've been averaging. So both really good, high potent offenses, right? The Eagles defense, I think that's where the discrepancy comes from for me. It's the 49ers defense and the Eagles defense. And I think the 49ers defense has been better. Like, especially if you look at the last 3 games specifically too, as like since they're bye, they've been better. The Eagles defense is ranked 20th in scoring defense. They're allowing 22.4 points per game this season. The 49ers are ranked first in scoring defense, allowing just 15.5 points per game this season. So even in the losses, Laurie, like they kept the score pretty low for their opponents. Like, I think the only one that was kind of high was the Bengals, and they got those points, or a good portion of those points came in like the fourth quarter. So like for a good chunk of that game, the 49ers defense kept it really close. And so that's why I give the 49ers an advantage there. And I do think, like I said, 27 for the Eagles, but I think even maybe those last 7 points will come in a last fourth quarter effort to try to get it, close or something like that.
Right.
But that's still like a 7-point win for the 49ers,
Yeah.
right? Like I think for me, the 49ers should be able to score points in this game. It's just a matter of keeping the Eagles from catching up to you.
Yeah.
Right. So
A shoot off, right?
yeah.
Until maybe the fourth quarter, and we'll see what happens. But like I said, that's when the Eagles defense kind of decides to step it up.
That's fair.
So
And
that's when I think it's going to get really interesting, the fourth quarter, for sure.
It's so I love games like this. It's like the best versus best. Like the Eagles offense is I think they've lead the league in second half points, and the 49ers defense leads the league in limiting like second half points, right? Like they're allowing the lowest. So yeah, I just love I love head-to-head matchups like this. You can't ask for anything better as, a fan of the sport. So it's going to be fun on Sunday. I'm really excited for this one. I'm sure you are too, Laurie. And yeah, we're going to check our scores on Sunday and see how close we get. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in on a Friday. We went, a bit over an hour here. And so appreciate you guys for tuning in with us. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. But for now, have a good Friday. Have a good Saturday. And let's get ready for Sunday, man. All right. Peace.